Hi friends, and welcome back to Growing Mothers. Today I'm going to share how we ended up co-sleeping and why I actually love it. So I'm going to be a little quiet today because Harley's actually asleep next to me right now. We are on like nap 2 or I think 3 of the day. Okay, so a little bit of background. When I was pregnant and even before I was pregnant, I was so anti co-sleeping. Like, if there was a hill I was going to die on, it was that we would not co-sleep. We would not have our baby in the bed. We weren't going to do it. I definitely was a little bit judgmental of moms who did. I even remember, like, having conversations with my mom about it. Like, I'm never going to do this. And her being like, okay, we'll see. So, but yeah, I was sure that it wasn't for us and that we would never do it. So why was I so anti-co-sleeping? Well, for one, I actually really like sleep. I like to stretch out, to like starfish basically in the bed where you're just like basically covering the entire bed. My husband will attest to this. I like to have like this much of the bed and he gets like this much of the bed. That would make me happy. I would like take up a whole like queen bed by myself. That'd be great. But yeah, so I really like my sleep, and that was something that I didn't want to give up, and I knew that co-sleeping would definitely affect my sleep quality. I also wanted time and space for just me and my husband, and I had heard horror stories about just like marriages that had really struggled because they were co-sleeping and there was a baby in the bed literally between them. And I didn't want that for us. I wanted our marriage to thrive. I wanted time for just me and my husband. I wanted our own bed. That was what I wanted. And then the last reason, of course, is that, like, statistically speaking, the safest thing for baby is back to sleep on their own, like, sterile, basically, like, their own mattress with nothing soft, nothing comforting, basically just back to sleep in a very, like, empty crib is what is supposed to be safest for a baby. And I really bought into that, and I bought into the idea that if we chose to co-sleep, it would be harming my child. I would be putting my child at risk. And as much as there definitely is a risk to co-sleeping, it's not the same risk that I thought it would be. It's not like if you do this, something bad will happen to your baby. There was a lot of research that I had never done about co-sleeping, and I actually ended up doing that research like the first 3 days home from the hospital because I wasn't sleeping at all, because literally like we were sleeping in shifts so that someone could always be awake with him, because he would not sleep in his bassinet and we didn't want to co-sleep. So it was just like a hot mess of someone trying to be up around the clock with him. And I was a mess, my husband was exhausted, and like once it got to the point where he was back to work, it was just so hard. Like, I would just have like full-on anxiety attacks once it got to like 7 p.m. because I knew that it meant that the night was starting and that I was going to have him for the whole night again, and it was just going to be really, really hard to be like trying to stay awake. It just was not a good situation. So I really believed that back to sleep alone in his crib was the absolute safest, best thing for my baby. And while it's still true that that is the general recommendation and that is what's technically safest, it also just didn't work for us. So the first night in the hospital, he slept great in his little plastic bassinet, and I was so excited because I was like, awesome, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna take him home. He's gonna sleep in his cute little bassinet that I picked out. No. That is not what happened. So we brought him home that first night, and anytime we put him in the bassinet, he would scream, turn bright red, and throw up. So we literally could not lay him down on his back for basically the first 6 weeks without him vomiting, like even for diaper changes. It's just really, really scary seeing a baby that small get so angry and so red and then just puke everywhere. Like, it was terrifying. And I remember like 36 hours in, just completely freaking down. I was so sleep deprived, my whole body hurt, and I just felt like I was failing as a mom. I felt like I couldn't get him to do the most basic thing, which was sleep in his bassinet. And I was so determined not to co-sleep that I was literally like doing everything I could to stay awake the whole night holding him, or only sleep when someone else was holding him. So my husband and I were sleeping in shifts, and my mom would take him sometimes so that we could both sleep for like an hour or two. But it was just a hot mess. It was probably like the worst. That part of postpartum was like 10 times worse than giving birth. I would have given birth like 6 times if I could have avoided that. And honestly, like a lot of that time is just a really big blur. Like my husband was working, so I would have the baby basically all night, and then he would leave for work in the morning, so I'd have the baby all day, and he'd get home at like 6:30 at night. And it would take him a while to like shower and decontaminate because of COVID. And by like 7:30, he'd be able to help for a couple of hours before nighttime started. But basically, he would take the baby, and I would just go sleep during that period. So I almost didn't see my husband very much at all. Like we did not get any time alone together. We were struggling. We were suffering. Like our marriage, our communication was just suffering. Because we were in that like cycle that was really bad. I mean, I was so drained. I was deep in my baby blues, which is that like 2-week postpartum period where your hormones are trying to like balance themselves. So it was just a really, really rough, it was just a lot of really rough things all at once, I would say. And I mean, like in general, the first 6 weeks are kind of like something that most people just kind of have to get through. They are hard no matter what. Not to say that our experience was like worse than anyone else's experience. It's just hard. The first 6 weeks as a new parent are incredibly hard. His severe reflux definitely made a huge impact there as well, and definitely made that so much worse. So after the 6-week mark, we found out we could lay him down on his back in the bed, not in the crib, not in the bassinet, in the bed, and he was able to sleep between me and my husband, with me kind of like curled around the baby like in a C shape, which is what they recommend for co-sleeping. And that was like worlds better, because I had literally been sleeping upright in a chair for 6 weeks. So it was like such a big deal to even be able to lay him down and to be able to lay down myself. Like that was amazing. And it felt a lot safer because he was finally like on his back, which I know is the safest for baby. Yeah, that is how it started. It definitely wasn't something that we did intentionally. It kind of just happened out of necessity and a need for sleep. And my husband likes to say co-sleep or no sleep. That's like become the motto. And I would say for us that's definitely true. And honestly, like, I get it. I can't imagine being a little baby and fresh out of the womb and basically being placed alone on a mattress that's not soft, by yourself across the room, or even in a different room from the only thing that you even know, which is your mom. So for us, it just felt like it made sense, and it felt natural, and it felt like this was what we were supposed to do with our baby. And he is doing absolutely amazing. He is just thriving, which I love. It also makes breastfeeding so much easier because we feed on demand, so he's still like, now he's waking up less. Now he's waking up like maybe twice or maybe 3 times. But before, there were some times where he would wake up like every single hour when he was cluster feeding. And I can't imagine having to get up out of bed every single time, get him up, feed him, get him back to sleep, get him down. Like, I don't think I would have slept at all. At least this way, I definitely got a little bit more sleep doing that. And he is so like efficient at feeding that he literally can just like latch himself on in the middle of the night without me having to do anything at this point, which makes a really, really big difference for how much sleep I'm getting. So babies have this like awesome instinct where they can just find their food in the middle of the night, and it's amazing. It's such a cool like testament to like how natural and intentional that design is there. He's so cute. He keeps moving. So like I said, this is what works for us. And I've done all the research on safe sleep and safe co-sleeping. And there's a lot that you can do to make co-sleeping as safe as possible, and reduce your risks. And the risk, so a lot of people think that your risk for SIDS is higher with co-sleeping, but SIDS is actually sudden infant death syndrome. So SIDS is actually unexplained. Co-sleeping raises your risks of accidental suffocation, which is basically if the baby gets covered or smothered or any of those awful things. But it doesn't actually raise the risk for SIDS. If anything, co-sleeping lowers the risks for SIDS because the mother being right next to the baby means that the baby actually wakes up more often, and every time the baby wakes up, their breathing resets. So the risk for SIDS with some babies is that some babies don't have that, like, I don't know if it's an instinct or it's just like a function where if their oxygen level gets too low, the brain wakes the baby up, so the baby starts crying and reoxygenates. So sometimes babies do not have that, where if their oxygen level gets too low, there's no like built-in response, and that typically is one of the biggest causes for SIDS. So yeah, actually co-sleeping in terms of that actually is beneficial. It is good for a baby to wake up every couple hours all night. Like, I know sleep training is a big thing, getting babies to sleep 12 hours a night, but biologically there's a lot of evidence that babies are actually supposed to wake up every 2 or 3 hours. That is a good baby when your baby does that. Like, it's not a bad baby that your baby's waking up every couple hours. And I know he still does, and that's totally fine because that is like biologically what he's supposed to do. And I'll definitely do a video sharing just what I've learned on like how to minimize the risks of co-sleeping. Again, this isn't medical advice. This is just what I researched and what we found works for us. And I think like just remember that nothing is without risk. Like, babies sleeping alone in their crib isn't without risk. Co-sleeping isn't without risk. Just in general, there's always some sort of risk, and our job is just to minimize the risks as much as possible. And we definitely do everything we can to minimize our risks while co-sleeping with our little baby, because of course we love him and we don't want anything bad to happen to him. And we're going to continue doing everything we can to protect him and do what's best for him. And we just so happen to believe that right now this is it. And honestly, before I was a mom, I definitely judged co-sleeping moms. I thought they were putting their baby at risk. I thought they were damaging their marriages. And I definitely just didn't understand what it's actually like. And I definitely understand that in a very different way now. And I felt that way because I was like, that's something I would never do. But here I am, on the other side of it, and I think my encouragement there is just to have grace with people, even if they're making choices that you wouldn't make, because we really don't know until we walk in someone's shoes. And whatever sleeping arrangement we choose for our babies, just make sure that you're doing all the research and you're doing everything you can to minimize risk. And that's all you can do. Being a mom is hard, and we are all just doing the best that we can. So, until next time, friends. Bye.